Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are Stephanie Vlahos and artist Miles MacGregor. Director, singer Stephanie Vlahos was born and raised in Westport, Connecticut. She graduated from Yale University and the Juilliard School. In her life as a singer, she's worked with these diverse people, areas from Pierre Boulez to Ry Cooder, from Andre Previn to John Adams. She's an opera singer. She's a cabaret performance. You've probably heard her voice in films and in commercials. And her career as a director came through all of her musical experience, I guess. Is that what happened, Stephanie?
A lot of it.
Tell me, when you sang solo with such an eclectic repertoire, how did you do it? How did you train yourself?
Well, I think my education was really from a pop culture as well as musical theater.
At Juilliard?
Well, initially, as a child, you grow up with pop music and musical theater in your ear. My dad was a screenwriter, but he was also a great violist. And so I listened to classical music, but never to opera. So opera was sort of the last thing that I got involved with, and it was only because I had a voice teacher and I guess I could sing.
So what songs, say what song would you sing? These were solo performances, right? With Ry?
Well, with Ry, the work that I did with Ry was for a film. And that really was operatic. That was for Wild Bill.
So that's where we do talk about seeing you and hearing you on film.
But my work with, for example, Van Dyke Parks has been a little bit more diverse. A lot of the cabaret music that I did, some people would call it more performance art than cabaret.
And did you study performance art?
No.
You never did? It's the way you direct yourself, or it's the way someone directs you?
It's the way you direct yourself.
You know what to do.
Yeah, it's a creative voice, and I think that opera never really could supply that to me. My own desire to do my own work.
Did you train in different ways for different things?
No, I used my natural voice, but I grew up as a child, loving all of the stuff that I had inherited, all of the old movies, all of the great musicals, all of the great singers.
On the East Coast?
Yeah.
There you were on the East Coast, yeah. You were directed by Gordon Davidson in what?
Midsummer Night's Dream.
Right. And what do you call that? Musical theater?
No, that's an opera. That's a legitimate opera by
legitimate.
Benjamin Britten.
And it was performed where?
On the Chandler stage at LA Opera.
And also you did Tales of Hoffman with Placido Domingo. Did he direct or did he sing?
No, he sang.
So it's really interesting. Did you pick up things from these people that are so great?
I worked with a lot of great directors, some of the best directors. It was sort of a wonderful education in that regard. The performers were great, were a great education. They have a lot to say about their art. And, I took up a couple of things along the way that gave me an opportunity to try my hand at directing and to be adventuresome.
So what did you do? How did you swing, and why would you swing from using your fantastic voice to directing?
Well, I think that as artists we go on many different journeys. some of us stay on one journey, others go off in many different directions. I was always a performer that had my own voice and my own perspective on things, and I think that's why, in addition to doing opera, I also did these cabarets, because I had something else that I needed to say. And I came upon directing quite by accident, because I started a project for outreach at the LA County High School for the Arts.
Oh, that's how it started.
Well, that's one of the ways. I mean, my
And then
work
it went
was also,
into Opera Posse.
It did, in a strange
did it?
way.
Is
It was a sort of a wonderful journey. I learned a lot about directing in working with kids, and
that's interesting.
creating this sort of, learning the language of it, the way to speak to people, etc. But I actually think they're some of the greatest inspiration, because at that point in their lives, they have a lot to say.
One wonders how you change your path and what influences you to take a complete directing career, because you're completely in this directing milieu at this point, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So you're not singing anymore?
Well, I've been thinking about it. You miss it when you don't have it.
You have a lot of connections, so working with students really helps the students, because you can bring all these interesting people to them.
Absolutely. This is always a good thing. All artists should give back on some level.
And I think if you ask them, then they do, right? Especially if you've
Absolutely.
worked with them. Now tell me about Opera Posse, because you're the founder and the artistic director. And is artistic director the same as actually directing?
No, it's not. But many artistic directors also are stage directors who direct shows for a given place that they may be the artistic director for.
Or they bring in other
Yeah.
directors or whatever.
Yeah.
So in your position as artistic director, you can bring in someone else.
Absolutely.
I see. So
And I
tell
hope
us what
to.
it is. Opera Posse. What kind of name is that?
Well, I regard what it is that I'm doing with this company as rather maverick. It is not like a little opera company or a vanity opera project where a bunch of people want to be able to perform, and so they do a small company. The company is really a producing organization, one. And it's our interest to produce new opera and to produce grand opera in a small way, to engage the community, and certainly to engage the community in unique ways that will bring more people, not just to Opera Posse, but to grand opera. And I think that needs to be done, whether or not, if we're all realists about opera, we're all going to understand that as much work that can be done in the trenches as possible is still not enough.
And being done in the trenches is educating young minds. That's what you need to do.
You have to educate young minds, you have to educate, and sometimes in educating the young minds, they bring their families with them who would also never do it.
Exactly. So I think you kind of told us what the mission was, but is there a greater mission to Opera Posse?
The greater mission is, there's several missions in Opera Posse. The greatest mission is to support the art of opera, but to do it in a way that embraces these economic times. It is not easy for a large opera company to put on the volume of material that it puts on every year. It's very costly.
But the thing that you do is you use all the genres. They're
I
all
do.
represented. Dance, music, music of course, orchestration, what else? Acting, costuming, everything is being utilized and used and taught to your students.
Well, the Opera Posse is not, this is a company, for example, we just in December did them all in the Night Visitors. That was with some unbelievable opera singers, some of whom are very good friends of mine, who decided they wanted to give back.
So you
and
called your
perform this
friends.
classic opera.
Right.
And so the idea with the Opera Posse is it's a posse of singers, of professional singers who are interested in giving back by doing it probably at an expense that isn't prohibitive to
And
the company.
who funds it? Where do you get your
Well,
funding?
we're a very, very young nonprofit. We've only been around for 9 months.
Oh, it's
And
so young.
in 9 months, we did a critically acclaimed production at the Pasadena Playhouse.
Oh, I was going to ask
And then
you.
we did Carmen High, which was our version of Outreach, but is really a piece that anybody could go see and get excited about. It's like a wonderful show.
I think that's what I was thinking of, was Carmen High, and I didn't know that you had professional singers in the group as well.
Absolutely.
And who was singing? And
Susanna Guzman, Greg Federley.
Fantastic.
Wonderful singers.
But Susanna is a person who gives of herself, especially for children, doesn't she?
She does. She does.
So I can see where she would want to do that. You have visiting guest artists, I guess, is what we call them, right?
Well, the idea, I'm working on something with Vladimir Chernov, for example, who is, one of the greater baritones, Russian baritones of recent times. I'm working on an event with him, which I think will be rather unique and of interest to people.
You took, thinking about that, because I'm sure it's going to be an interpretation, but you took Bizet's Carmen, and you put it in a high school setting. And did you write all that?
I rewrote the lyrics, yes, but the lyrics still stay rather close to the original French. They're just, they're of today, and they have to do with high school issues.
That's what was so interesting. And was it, what venue was that in?
This was at the Japan America Theater.
So you can go all over the city and use
Well, we're
theaters,
actually in
stages.
negotiation now with a couple of larger theaters who are very interested in the project. The project also, Carmen High not only uses the extant Bizet material, but it also interpolates contemporary songs written by teenagers.
Is that right?
That are wonderful. Yeah, pop songs.
So great.
Yeah.
What a wonderful evening.
Well, I think so. There are probably some aficionados that'll never be able to accept it, but I think that this is important work and an important way to make a lasting impression on teenagers.
And I'm so glad that you're doing it.
I am
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie Vlahos. And look for Opera Posse, because I think she has something that we can all relate to. Don't go away. We'll be back with Miles MacGregor. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with artist, muralist, Miles MacGregor, who was born and raised in Los Angeles. He never went to art school, but learned from his artist mother as he grew up. She introduced him to the European classicists like Vermeer and Caravaggio, and the Art Nouveau symbolists, which he mixed with his contemporary influences of graffiti and photorealism. His work is peppered with the Chicano and Mexican culture, portraits and living with the people. And Mac was commissioned to paint murals in the United States, in Europe, in Cuba, in the Far East. He's shown in galleries, even though the work is on such a grand scale. And the style is of ripples. Ripples. What is this ripples?
It's it's ripples. It's kind of like it's like waves in a way, But it's also it kind of looks like Turing patterns a little bit,
It's like kind of cartography in a way too, right?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Well, how did you come up with this style?
It's been a sort of an evolution, It's something that I was working on. I mean, I can look at old drawings from when I was a little kid, and I would have these sort of contour lines, and not like it is now, but it was sort of the early stages.
We talked about growing up with an artist mother and how she influenced you. Did you think that you were going to be an artist? Did you feel that that was your calling?
Yeah, yeah. I grew into it. You know, I think it was ever since I was about this tall that I knew that I was going to.
And you're very tall now.
I'm tall now, but yeah, no, I mean, I grew up in a artistic household. There was paintings everywhere. There was, art books, and we would talk about art, and so from the time, my whole life, ever since I was a little kid, I knew, that that's what I wanted to do.
Did you go to museums?
Yeah, always, and that just seemed normal to me. That's what people do. You go to museums and.
People don't realize that that's what people do, or that's what people should do.
Not everybody does that.
No. How did you actually start your career? Were you a street art? Do you call yourself a street artist?
I don't say street artist necessarily, just because that's sort of a, recent term.
Yeah. What is the term? What is the right term?
I don't. I would just say artist. But
yeah.
I mean, I paint a lot of murals, and I just like public art. Public artist. Or muralist. I mean.
But did you paint on the side of buildings that like the graffiti artist did?
Yeah.
You did? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I.
All over L.A. or all over everywhere you went?
Yeah. I grew up mostly in Phoenix, and that was sort of where I got into it and got started, and I had always been into art and drawing and painting, but there, in grade school and in high school, there was friends of mine that were sort of getting into painting graffiti and.
Oh, so was it like tagging? Did you have a certain tagging thing that was you?
I mean, you could say that, yeah. I mean,
like contours. What was it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a way, honestly, I don't think that what I do on walls now is really. I don't classify it any differently. It just looks better,
It's
but
a mural.
The same thing,
It's the same thing?
Yeah, it just looks better now. I've gotten better, but when I was a little kid, or when I was younger, it wasn't. I was just learning.
But someone was commissioning you to do these things now. Before you were doing things on your own.
Find places to do it.
Yeah, you had to, and during that time, you were painting portraits of your friends.
Yeah.
And how were you doing it? What kind of material?
Well, I was painting them. I was painting portraits with acrylics, smaller pieces, and then I was also painting them on walls and like trains and stuff sometimes.
Oh, you were on trains. Now we're getting to the moving targets. Were you using using aerosol cans?
Yeah. It's fun. It's the most fun way to paint that I know of.
How do you learn to paint like that when you were, as a kid, like really carefully painting things and doing things maybe in contours? But how do you learn to use an aerosol can?
It takes practice. It takes years and years of practice, and I guess if you do anything long enough, you can excel at it. But yeah, it takes a lot of practice.
And then you moved from that into a grand scale. And what process? You've done these murals in Cuba, I know, that are fantastic. Heads of people and like this kind of thing. What's the process? How do you do that? Do you make a small drawing first?
They're usually based on photos that I take. So I whenever, especially when I travel, I always have a camera on me, and I'll just take pictures of people on the street. A lot of times they're just in passing, anonymous pictures of people, and
something like this.
This was
a
posed.
Friend?
Yeah.
Posed.
Was, yeah. Yeah, I'll do regular photo shoots too.
Is this a regular photo shoot?
That was just on a subway train in New York, and it was just casual. It was kind of kind of snuck a little picture, and that's usually how it is, because the best pictures sometimes look very random.
But this is a painting, because I can see the contour lines.
Yeah, that's a painting, and that was posed.
And did you pose? Do you pose the people?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, I'll take hundreds of pictures. I'll take tons of photos and different angles, different lighting.
This is what we were talking about, I guess, is it?
That was in Cuba. Yeah, that was in Havana.
Who gives you a commission to do something like this?
Well, this one was for the 11th Havana Biennial.
The art biennial.
Yeah, it was actually commissioned by the Cisneros Fontanals Foundation.
Oh, great.
Out of Miami.
Oh, that was great. And this?
And this was actually not that far from here. This was here in Hollywood, and this was actually painted with two friends of mine, Retna and Coffee.
Whose Coffee is it?
Yeah, Coffee. He painted the designs around the hands, and the sort of geometric designs, and then Coffee did the big bold letters behind the figure.
And this is the same
Yeah,
two collaborations?
This was just with Retna. So I painted the figure in spray paint, and then he painted the text around it with
And look
brush.
how big it is. You can see the people here.
Yeah, that was big. That was in Miami during Art Basel.
And it was a commission as well?
You
Or
could,
did
I
you
mean, it
find a
wasn't.
wall?
That was more. It was
They have to give you a wall, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. This is great.
And that's another collaboration.
I was going to ask you, do you collaborate a lot?
I guess you could say, yeah. Well, I used to do a lot of collaborations with Retna, and I also did a few with Coffee, and I've done a few with a couple other people, but mostly just them.
Are you good friends? Is that it? Is that why you collaborate? I mean,
Yeah,
you
well,
believe in the
it's-
same things?
It's friendship, but it's also it's respect for the work,
And this?
And this was a mural that I painted in Saigon in Vietnam.
So you've been, all over. And
Yeah. And this is a portrait of my girlfriend's grandmother.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
she used to work during the Vietnam War. She worked in Laos near the Mekong River. And this mural, the Mekong River is actually right one street over from that wall. So it was kind of a cool little...
Are these murals still up? The ones that we've just shown and the ones that we're talking about and the ones that we've talked about?
Most of them are. The one in Vietnam isn't. They actually tore the building down.
This last one, because
Yeah.
they tore the building. When you go to Denmark, or you go to Italy, or you go to Saigon, obviously you had some connection in Vietnam. Who greets you and who finds you to brings you to do these things?
It's I guess you would say it comes from word of mouth, but there's always some kind of invitation, or usually there is, Or lately, there for the last few years, it's usually maybe somebody will email me or contact me and maybe they want to commission a mural, or they're having some kind of event, or they're some kind of art show.
They know you through word of mouth, through your work.
Yeah,
They know
yeah.
you through your work. You're showing at Katie Cohn's gallery in Culver City.
Yeah.
How do you bring these big pieces down to a size of a gallery?
Well, it's not actually that hard for me. What's difficult, and this is sort of counterintuitive, but the big murals, even huge ones. I just did one a couple months ago in Mexico City, and it was one of the biggest ones, or one of the highest that I've done. It was over 10 stories high.
Wow.
And I did it in a week. I did it in 1 week.
Do you work with it? Do a lot of people help you paint?
No.
You're just up there hanging there doing it?
Yeah, it's just me. It's just me. I wish I could, actually.
And then when
it'd be nice to delegate things. That's what a lot of other artists do, and maybe someday I'll figure out some way to do that. But I don't know how to have other people paint for me.
But so can you bring that mural into Katie's gallery, into Katie Cohn's gallery?
Well, the pieces for the galleries tend to be with acrylic and.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this portrait of me, and I'm going to tell you the process. I came to the gallery, and you must have taken hundreds of pictures.
I did.
I don't know what kind of camera you were using.
Canon.
Just a can, just as and then you took them home. Then what did you do?
I went through all the photos and sort of had to find the perfect photo. It had to be the best photo, and it had to be it's a really subtle thing, but it had to look classy. It had to look timeless. It had to look like you. It had to actually work for a painting. It had to there's a lot of different elements that I had to sort of keep in mind, sort of a little mental.
So just one clicks and it's just right.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of narrow it down. So I'll pick out the ones that I like, and then, that'll be like the first pass, and then I'll sort of go through the ones that I picked and narrow it down. Then
well, I'm excited because I think it's fantastic.
Thank
and you
you.
used acrylic?
Yeah, this is acrylic and brush
And what's it on?
On wood panel.
So-
And just for the record, I wouldn't really say it's fully finished.
oh, right, yes.
I still want to add a little bit more, but it's
You're going to
finished
take
enough.
it. You're going to take it back to the studio and finish it.
Yeah, there's just a couple more things I wanted to do that I didn't get to, but.
And this book, I just want to mention quickly before we leave Alianza, and it was a collaboration at Robert Berman's gallery. Is that what it was?
Well,
Or an art show?
we had a show there, but this was just a book that company out of San Francisco, Upper Playground.
But that was,
printed.
did it come out of that show at Robert Berman's?
It was around the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was fabulous with retina and with your portraits of real people from the street.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, El Mac.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
It was a pleasure.
And keep writing, JAQUINN1@AOL.com. See you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.
The Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen.